The first time my father smiled at me with genuine pride, I was holding a glass of champagne at my younger brother's wedding reception, standing next to a man my family had never met. The second time my father smiled at me, it was 3 hours later when the band had stopped playing, the cake was being cut, and a federal officer walked through the side door of the country club. I did not cry when I found out what my father did to my Harvard acceptance letter. I was 17. I did not cry when my brother got the car I was promised, the tuition I was denied, and the bedroom I had painted myself. I was 22. I did not cry when my mother looked at me across a Thanksgiving table and said, "Can you just let it go? You're making everyone uncomfortable." I was 26, but at my brother's wedding. 12 years after my father threw away a letter that would have changed my entire life, I watched him smile at me from across the mahogany bar, and I finally smiled back. Because he had no idea what I had done to his favorite son's wedding cake. The wedding was not supposed to be about me. I understood that. My brother Kyle, 18 months younger, golden retriever in human form, the kind of person who genuinely believed things work out because I'm a good person, was marrying a woman named Sloane who had once asked me in front of their entire dinner party why I was still renting. I remember that dinner party clearly. It was 2 years before the wedding. Sloane had just moved into Kyle's house, the house my father had helped him buy with a $45,000 down payment that I only learned about when I saw the mortgage documents accidentally left on my mother's kitchen counter. Sloane was wearing a cream-colored dress and holding a glass of white wine. She looked at my apartment keys on the table and said, "Oh, you're still renting? I thought you would have bought something by now." The table went quiet. My father looked down at his plate. My mother made a small noise. Kyle laughed nervously. I said, "I like renting. It gives me flexibility." Sloane said, "Flexibility for what?" I said, "For leaving." She did not understand what I meant. Neither did anyone else at that table. But I did. I had been planning my exit from this family since I was 17 years old. Warden, every year that passed, every dollar I saved, every promotion I earned, every document I collected, it was all part of the same quiet, patient departure. My father, Richard, had retired from his regional bank management position 2 years prior to the wedding. He spent his mornings on the back porch reading golf magazines and his afternoons texting me photos of Kyle's new deck, Kyle's new dog, Kyle's new promotion. He had never once asked me about my work. He knew I did something with data. He did not know that the something involved contracts with 3 state governments, a security clearance I was not supposed to mention, and a salary that was currently 2.3 times what he had made at his peak. I calculated that number exactly. 2.3 times. I had spreadsheets. I had tax documents. I had W-2s going back 9 years. I knew exactly how much money I had earned, how much I had saved, and how much I had invested. My father did not know any of this because he had never asked. He had never asked about my job, my salary, my rent, my relationship status, or my plans for the future. The only questions he ever asked me were about Kyle. "Have you talked to Kyle? Do you know if Kyle is okay? Can you check on Kyle for me?" I was not Kyle's keeper, but I had been raised to believe I was. My mother, Diane, had called me 3 weeks before the wedding. "Your father would really like it if you brought someone. It's been a while since they've seen you with anyone." I told her I would think about it. I did not tell her that I had been seeing someone for 14 months. I did not tell her his name, his job, or the fact that he was the head of municipal finance for a city of 400,000 people. I did not tell her because I had learned, over 12 years, that information was leverage. And I had been building leverage the way my father built his 401k, quietly, obsessively, and with an exit strategy. Let me tell you exactly what happened when I was 17. It was April of my junior year. I had a 4.47 weighted GPA. I was president of the debate team, first chair in orchestra, and I had spent 6 months on my Harvard application essay, a piece about growing up as the older sister to a brother who was diagnosed with dyslexia in 2nd grade, about how I learned to translate the world for him, about how I became fluent in the gap between what people see and what people are capable of. And that essay was the best thing I had ever written. My English teacher cried when she read it. My guidance counselor said it was the strongest application essay he had seen in 15 years. My grandmother, who had only a 6th grade education, read it 3 times and then said, "You're going to Harvard. I can feel it in my bones." My grandmother was right, but I did not know that yet. I did not know Harvard had sent a letter. I came home from school on a Tuesday. It was raining. I remember the rain because my jacket was soaked and my backpack was heavy with textbooks and my shoes were making squelching sounds on the kitchen floor. My father was in the driveway washing Kyle's car, a used Honda Civic he had bought him 2 weeks earlier. For his confidence, Kyle was a sophomore. He did not have a license yet. I asked if any mail had come. My father wiped his hands on a rag. He looked at me for a long moment, then he said, "You need to be realistic about your options." I did not understand what he meant. He went inside. I followed. He opened the kitchen drawer where he kept the recycling. He pulled out a crumpled envelope with the Harvard University crest in the corner. It had been torn open. "You didn't get in," he said. I reached for the letter. He pulled it back. "Richard," my mother said from the doorway. She was holding a dish towel. Her face was pale. "She needs to understand," my father said. "This obsession with the East Coast, the tuition, the distance, it's not practical. And frankly, her application wasn't." "Give me the letter," I said. He handed it to me, but he had already read it. He had already decided what it said, and what it actually said, the part he had crumpled over, the part he had folded under so I would see the rejection first, was this: "We are pleased to offer you a place in the incoming freshman class." I read it 3 times. The words did not change. The crest did not change. The signature from the dean of admissions did not change. I looked up at my father. He was not looking at me. He was looking at my mother. He was waiting for her to say something. She did not. I said, "This says I got in." My father said, "It's not a full ride. We can't afford it. And your mother needs you here." My mother said nothing. I looked back down at the letter. The offer was real. The deadline was May 1st. The financial aid package was not mentioned in the letter. That would come separately. But my father had already decided. He had already called the school. He had already begun the process of dismantling my future before I even knew it was under attack. I said, "I want to call them." My father said, "No." I said, "I want to see the financial aid offer." My father said, "There is no financial aid offer. We make too much money. And even if there was, you're not going." I was 17. I did not know yet that some betrayals are too quiet to scream about. I did not know that the most dangerous thing you can do to a person who has just destroyed your future is to let them believe they got away with it. I folded the letter carefully. I put it in my backpack. I said, "Okay." And I went to my room. I did not cry. I sat on my bed for 2 hours. I looked at the wall. Yet I looked at the posters I had hung up in middle school, a periodic table, a map of the world, a photograph of the Harvard Library that I had cut out of a magazine. I looked at my desk, where I had spent hundreds of nights studying for tests that my father said were too ambitious. I looked at my bookshelf, filled with novels and textbooks and college guides that my father had never touched. And then I made a decision. I did not know exactly what that decision was yet. But I knew it involved waiting. I knew it involved surviving. I knew it involved never trusting my father again. Here is what my father did not know. Standing in that driveway, washing my brother's car, I had already been accepted to Columbia, to Penn, to Williams. I had already been offered a full ride to our state school's honors college. Harvard was not my only option. Harvard was my dream. And he had stolen the moment of opening that letter. He had stolen the memory of my mother's face when she read it. He had stolen the phone call to my grandmother, who had cleaned houses for 40 years and who had saved every report card I ever brought home. But he had not stolen the acceptance. The letter was in my backpack. The offer was real, and I had until May 1st to decide. So why did I end up at State? Because my father called the financial aid office at Harvard the next day. I found this out 6 years later from a clerk who remembered the call because of how strange it was. He didn't withdraw my application. He didn't decline the offer. He just asked a question. "What's your policy on students who have family obligations that prevent them from attending?" And then he mentioned my brother's dyslexia. He mentioned my mother's health concerns. He painted a picture of a household that could not survive without me. Harvard did not rescind my offer, but they did flag my file with a note about family circumstances that may affect enrollment. And when I called them myself 3 days later to ask about deferring for a year, because I was 17 and scared, and my father had spent 72 hours telling me that if I left, Kyle would fail 10th grade, my mother would fall apart, and the family would never recover. The admissions officer used a very gentle, very careful tone. "We understand you have significant responsibilities at home. Perhaps a local institution would be a better fit at this time." I did not know my father had called them. I thought the letter had been a mistake. I thought they had changed their minds. I thought I had misread everything. I went to State. I lived at home for 2 years. And every single morning, I made my brother's breakfast, packed his lunch, and drove him to school because my father said it was the least I could do. Let me describe those 2 years for you. They were not dramatic. They were not violent. They were not the kind of abuse that leaves visible scars. They were the kind of abuse that happens in thousands of homes every day, the slow, quiet erosion of a person's future by a parent who believes they are acting out of love. Every morning, I woke up at 6. I made coffee. I made Kyle's breakfast, eggs, toast, orange juice, exactly the way he liked it. I packed his lunch. I packed my own lunch. I drove him to school. I went to my classes. I came home. I made dinner. I did the dishes. I helped Kyle with his homework. I went to bed. Repeat. My father did not thank me. He did not acknowledge me. He acted as if this arrangement was normal, natural, inevitable. He acted as if I had no other options. He acted as if I was lucky to have a family that needed me. I was not lucky. I was trapped. But I was also watching. I was learning. I was taking notes. Here is what everyone believed about me for the next decade. That I was quiet, that I was reserved, that I was still figuring things out while Kyle was really thriving, that I worked as a data analyst at a regional firm that no one had heard of, that I rented a small apartment in a mediocre part of town because I couldn't afford better, that I didn't date much because I was picky or difficult or still hung up on that college thing, that I was bitter, that I was jealous, that I needed to let go of the past and stop comparing myself to my brother. My mother said this at a Christmas dinner. My aunt nodded. My uncle patted my hand. My father smiled. Kyle said, "Yeah, sis, you're smart. Just get a better job or whatever." I smiled back at all of them. I had already, at that point, been promoted to a role that required me to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I had already been given access to a database that contained the financial records of every public employee in our state. I had already been asked by a deputy director, if I was comfortable with a background check that goes back to high school. I said I was. They found my father's phone call to Harvard. They found the timing of it. They found the note in my file. They did not care. It was not relevant to my clearance. But I kept the document. I kept all of it. I kept it the way my grandmother kept her recipe box, organized, labeled, and ready. Let me tell you about my grandmother. Her name was Evelyn. She was born in 1943 in a small town in West Virginia. She dropped out of school in 6th grade to help care for her younger siblings. She married my grandfather when she was 19. She cleaned houses for 40 years. She never owned a home. She never had a savings account, but she had a library card and she read 2 books a week for her entire adult life. When I was born, she told my mother, "This one is different. This one is going to go places." My mother laughed. My father rolled his eyes. But my grandmother was serious. She bought me my first dictionary. She took me to the library every Saturday. She paid for my SAT prep course with money she had saved from cleaning a lawyer's house for 3 years. When I showed her the Harvard acceptance letter, the crumpled, frosting-stained original that I had pulled out of my backpack that terrible Tuesday night, she did not say anything for a long time. She just looked at it. Then she folded it carefully. Then she put it in her Bible. "This is yours," she said. "And one day you're going to show it to everyone who said you couldn't." She died 5 years later. She never saw me graduate from state. She never saw me get my security clearance. She never saw me meet Marcus or buy my first investment property or hit my first 100,000 in savings. But her lawyer handed me an envelope at her funeral. Inside was the letter, on the outside in her handwriting, "For when you're ready." I was not ready yet. But I kept the envelope in my safe deposit box for 7 more years. And every time I looked at it, I remembered that someone had believed in me. Someone had seen me. Someone had known that I was not quiet or reserved or bitter or jealous. I was patient. I was waiting. I was building. The secret truth is this: I was never powerless. I was just patient. The second secret truth is that my father had committed a crime. Not a big one. Not the kind that sends you to federal prison. But a crime nonetheless. When he called Harvard and misrepresented my family's circumstances to influence their admissions decision, he had committed an act of fraud. It was minor. It was probably not prosecutable. But it was a violation of the Federal Higher Education Act of 1965, specifically the provisions regarding third-party interference with admissions. I learned this from a lawyer I started dating when I was 24. He was a public defender. He liked to talk about weird statutes. I liked to listen. "It's a civil violation," he said, reading the document I had pulled from my clearance file. "But if you had damages, if you could prove that his call directly caused you to lose out on financial aid, on future earnings, on opportunities, you could sue." I thought about this. I did not sue. And because suing my father would have been a small revenge. It would have been a conversation. It would have been a check. It would have been something my family could explain away. She was always difficult. She never could let things go. I did not want small revenge. I wanted him to smile at me at his favorite son's wedding 12 years later and have no idea that I had already won. Let me tell you about the years between 22 and 30. They were not glamorous. They were not fast. They were not the kind of montage you see in movies where the protagonist suddenly gets a makeover in a corner office. I worked. I worked a lot. I worked weekends. I worked holidays. I worked through colds and flus and the kind of exhaustion that makes you forget what day it is. I took every project no one else wanted. I stayed late. I came early. I learned every system, every database, every shortcut, every backdoor. I made myself indispensable to people who had the power to promote me, and they did promote me, again and again and again. By 25, I was managing a team of 12 people. By 27, I was in charge of a data integration project for 3 state agencies. By 29, I had been promoted to a role that required me to sign a new NDA every 6 months. By 30, I was making more money than my father had ever made, and I had never once told him about it. He never asked. That is the part that still surprises me, even now. He never asked. Not once. Not, how is work? Not, are you happy? Not, do you need anything? He called me every Sunday for 10 years. And every Sunday he asked about Kyle. Or, have you talked to Kyle? Did Kyle mention his new project at work? Is Kyle coming for Thanksgiving? Do you think Kyle is happy? I answered every question. I was polite. I was calm. I was the perfect daughter. The one who never complained, never demanded, never asked for anything. And every Sunday, after I hung up the phone, I added another line to my spreadsheet. Let me show you the spreadsheet. I still have it. It is called the account. It has columns for every dollar my parents spent on Kyle, car payments, tuition, rent, groceries, gas money, wedding contributions, down payment assistance, birthday presents, Christmas presents, a vacation to Cancun that Kyle took with his college friends that my father paid for because he deserves a break. The total, as of the wedding day, was $208,000. The next column was for me. Car payments, 0, tuition, 0, rent, 0, groceries, 0, gas money, 0, wedding contributions, 0, birthday presents, an average of $43 per year, Christmas presents, an average of $61 per year. The total, as of the wedding day, was less than $2,000 over 12 years. I did not care about the money. I cared about the pattern. I cared about the message. The message was clear. Kyle was an investment. I was an afterthought. But here's the thing about being an afterthought. No one watches you. No one notices what you are doing. No one pays attention to the quiet daughter who sits in the corner at family gatherings and answers politely and never makes a scene. No one noticed when I started investing. No one noticed when I bought my first rental property. No one noticed when I opened a high-yield savings account. No one noticed when I met Marcus at a conference on municipal finance and spent 3 hours talking about data security and bond ratings and the future of public infrastructure. No one noticed because no one was looking, and that was my advantage. Let me tell you about Marcus. He is not a character in a story. He is a person. He is a person who reads the newspaper every morning and calls his mother every night and still cannot fold a fitted sheet no matter how many times I show him. He is a person who cried the first time I told him about the Harvard letter, not because he was sad for me, but because he was angry for me. He is a person who said, "We don't have to do anything about it. But I want you to know that if you ever want to do something about it, I will help you." I did not know what I wanted to do about it. For a long time, I thought I wanted nothing. I thought I wanted to move on. I thought I wanted to forget. I thought I wanted to be the bigger person. But then my grandmother's envelope arrived. And then Marcus's mother became a judge. And then Kyle got engaged to Sloan. And my father announced he was paying for the wedding. And my mother put me at the parents' table. And I realized that I had been waiting 12 years for something I had not yet named. I wanted to be seen. Not forgiven. Not reconciled. Not healed. Seen. I wanted my father to look at me and finally understand what he had done, not because I needed his apology, but because I needed him to know that he had not won. 3 months before the wedding, I got a call from Kyle. "Hey, so Dad's paying for the whole thing," he said. "Like, the whole thing. Country club, open bar, band, the works." "That's nice," I said. "Yeah, so he wants to know if you're going to bring anyone. Because Sloan's side has a lot of couples. And it's going to be weird if you're like the only solo person." I did not tell him that I had been with Marcus for over a year. I did not tell him that Marcus had just been appointed to a position that required him to recuse himself from any contract involving his own family members. I did not tell him that Marcus's mother was a retired judge, that his father was a former state senator, or that he had already asked me 6 weeks earlier if I would be willing to relocate to the capital if he ran for office. I said, "I'll bring someone." "Cool," Kyle said, "just don't bring anyone weird." I hung up the phone. I looked at Marcus. He was sitting on my couch, reading a report about water treatment facilities. He looked up at me. "Weird," he said. "Apparently. Should I be weird?" "Not yet," he smiled. "When should I be weird?" I thought about it. "At the cake cutting." He put down his report. "What are we doing to the cake?" I told him. "Not everything. Just enough. Just the part about the letter and the plastic sleeve and the second tier." He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That's not weird. That's beautiful." I almost cried. I did not cry. I had not cried about the letter since I was 17. But I almost cried then, sitting on my own couch, neat in my own apartment, with a man who looked at me like I was the smartest person he had ever met. The wedding was scheduled for the third Saturday in September. The country club was the same one where my father had hosted his bank's annual Christmas party every year, the same one where he had introduced Kyle to the regional vice president, the same one where he had never once mentioned that he had a daughter. I RSVP'd for 2. My mother called within 48 hours. "Who are you bringing? A friend?" "What kind of friend?" "The kind who owns a suit." She paused. "Is it serious?" "Mom," I said, "do you actually want to know, or are you just worried about seating arrangements?" She didn't answer. I said, "Put us next to the band, we like music." She put us at the parents' table, made directly across from my father. I smiled when I saw the seating chart. I had been waiting 12 years for this dinner. Let me tell you what I brought to that wedding. Not a speech, not a scene, not a confrontation. I brought a leather folio. It looked like a professional portfolio, the kind a real estate agent might carry. Inside I had 3 things. First, a copy of the original Harvard acceptance letter, laminated. My grandmother had saved it. She had hidden it in her Bible after I showed it to her, the night my father threw it away. She had given it back to me at her funeral. Her lawyer handed it to me in an envelope marked for when you're ready. Second, a printout of the phone call log from Harvard's admissions office, dated April 12, 2012. Duration, 14 minutes. Caller ID, Richard T. Harrow. I read notes. Father expressed concerns about students' family obligations. Advised to consider local options. Third, a single sheet of paper. On it, I had typed a list. Kyle's car, $14,000. Kyle's tuition for undergrad, $87,000. Kyle's down payment on his house, $45,000. Kyle's wedding estimated $62,000. Total $208,000. Below that, I had typed another list. My car, 0. I take the bus. My tuition for undergrad, 0. Scholarships, my down payment, 0. I rent, my wedding, 0. I am not married, total, 0. Below that, I had typed a third list. My current salary, $187,000. My retirement account, $214,000. My investment portfolio, $89,000. My partner's net worth, confidential. I did not need to show him any of this. That was not the point. The point was that I had it. The point was that for 12 years, I had been collecting receipts while he had been writing checks. The point was that he thought I was the failure, and I was sitting on enough evidence to buy his country club. But that wasn't the revenge. The revenge was the cake. Let me walk you through the cake. I need you to understand the level of detail I put into this because it is the most important part of the story. 6 months before the wedding, Sloane asked me to be a bridesmaid. I said no. She was offended. I explained that I had work commitments and that I thought she should have people who actually liked her standing next to her. Well, she did not know what to do with this. She told Kyle. Kyle told my mother. My mother told me I was being difficult. I said, I'll handle the cake. Sloane was not a baker. She was not a planner. She was a woman who had grown up with caterers and party coordinators and the kind of money that makes you think organization is a personality trait. She said, fine, whatever, just don't make it weird. I made a spreadsheet. I sent it to her. She ignored it. I sent it again. She forwarded it to my mother. My mother called me. Why are you sending spreadsheets about cake? Because she asked me to handle the cake? She meant pick a bakery. I picked 7. I need her preference on flavors. My mother sighed. You always make everything so complicated. I did not tell her that I'd already contacted the baker. I did not tell her that the baker was a woman I had met at a professional conference. A woman who had built a $2 million business from a home kitchen and who owed me a favor because I had helped her navigate a contract dispute with a distributor. The baker's name is Elena. She is from Moldova. She came to this country with nothing and built a business that supplies desserts to restaurants in 3 states. She is the kind of person who does not ask why you need a fake tear in a wedding cake. She just asks what color you want the fondant. I told her white, gold leaf accents, buttercream flowers in pale pink and ivory, and I told her about the letter. She did not flinch. She said, I will seal it in food-grade plastic. It will be safe. No one will know it is there until the knife hits it. I asked her how she knew exactly where the knife would hit. She said, because I have been making wedding cakes for 23 years. I know where every groom stands. I know where every father stands. I know exactly where that knife is going to go. She was right. The secret was the second tier. From the outside, it looked like the rest of the cake, white fondant, gold leaf, the kind of thing you see on Instagram and assume cost $3,000. But the second tier was not cake. It was a hollow shell, and inside that shell, laminated and sealed in food-grade plastic, I had placed a single document, the Harvard acceptance letter, not a copy, the original, the one my grandmother had saved, the one my father had thrown away. I was not going to serve it to anyone. I was not going to announce it. I was not going to make a scene. I was going to let my father cut the cake. Because at this wedding, my father had insisted on the ceremonial cake cutting. He wanted the photos. He wanted the moment. He wanted to stand next to his son and his new daughter-in-law with a silver knife and a big smile. And when he cut into that second tier, when the knife hit the plastic sleeve, when he had to stop and pull out a crumpled piece of paper covered in buttercream frosting, I was going to be standing right behind him, not to confront him, to say very quietly so only he could hear, that's the letter you threw away. I've been carrying it for 12 years, and I'm done. But that still wasn't the revenge. The revenge was what happened 30 minutes before the cake cutting. Let me set the scene for you. The wedding was beautiful. I will give Sloane that. She had good taste. The flowers were expensive. The band was talented. The food was excellent. The guests were drunk and happy and taking photos of everything. I wore a dark green dress. Marcus wore a navy suit. We arrived separately from my family. I had made it clear that I would not ride with them, would not stay with them, would not be photographed with them unless absolutely necessary. My mother was hurt. My father pretended not to notice. Kyle was too busy being the groom to care. The ceremony was short. The reception was loud. I drank 1 glass of champagne and then switched to water because I wanted to remember every detail. At 7:30, my father found me in the hallway outside the men's room. He had been drinking. His face was red. He was smiling. You brought a friend, he said. I did. Marcus, is it? It is. What does Marcus do? I looked at my father. He had no idea. He had not asked me a single question about my life in 12 years that wasn't about Kyle. He was asking now because he was nervous. Because I had shown up with a man in a $3,000 suit who shook hands like a politician and asked my mother about her garden like he actually cared. Marcus is the head of municipal finance for the capital city, I said. My father blinked. He manages a budget of $460 million, I continued. He reports directly to the mayor, and his mother is retired Judge Margaret Chen, who presided over the fraud case that sent the former city comptroller to federal prison for 11 years. My father stopped smiling. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked. He stared at me. You've been hiding things. No, I said. You just never asked. I walked away. I did not look back. I could feel his eyes on my spine, and for the first time in 12 years, I did not feel small. I found Marcus at the bar. He was talking to Sloane's father, a man named Bill, who sold industrial refrigeration equipment and had no idea that he was standing next to someone who could access his company's state contracts. Marcus was nodding politely, saying things like, fascinating, and I'd love to learn more. When Bill walked away, I said, my father is nervous. Marcus said, good. He asked about you. What did you tell him? Everything. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Everything. Enough, he smiled. Then we should probably go find our seats. The cake cutting is in an hour. The cake cutting was scheduled for 8:45. At 8:30, my mother pulled me aside. We were standing near the bathrooms again. I was starting to think my mother had stationed herself there deliberately. "Your father wants to talk to you," she said. "I'm sure he does. He's upset." "That's unfortunate. He says you're trying to embarrass him." I looked at my mother. I loved her. I did not like her. There is a difference. "Mom," I said, "did you know he called Harvard?" She went very still. "Wait, did you know he told them I couldn't leave home because of Kyle? Because of you?" She didn't answer. "Did you know he threw away my acceptance letter before I even saw it?" "He was trying to protect you," she whispered. "From what?" She had no answer. I said, "I'm not going to embarrass him. I'm going to let him cut the cake, and then I'm going to leave, and I'm not coming back." Her eyes filled with tears. "You can't do that. I already have." I walked toward the cake. The band played At Last. Kyle and Sloane stood in front of the 5-tier cake, holding the silver knife. My father stood next to Kyle, his hand on his son's shoulder. The photographer knelt in front of them. The guests gathered around, phones raised. I stood behind my father. Marcus stood next to me. He squeezed my hand. But my father looked back at me. He smiled. It was a nervous smile, a pleading smile, a don't do anything crazy smile. I smiled back. He turned to the cake. He put his hand over Kyle's on the knife. They pushed into the bottom tier, the traditional first cut, and then my father guided the knife upward toward the second tier. I had calculated this. The baker had helped me. The second tier was slightly softer than the others. The knife would go through the fondant, through the buttercream, and hit the plastic sleeve about 2 inches in. It happened exactly as planned. The knife stopped. My father frowned. He pushed harder. The knife slipped sideways, tearing a gash in the fondant. "What's in there?" Kyle asked. My father reached into the cake with his fingers. He pulled out a lump of frosting and plastic. He held it up. And the room went quiet. "Is that paper?" Sloane said. My father turned it over. The frosting smeared across the plastic, but the Harvard crest was still visible. The date was still visible. His name, Richard T. Harrow, was still visible in the caller ID log I had printed on the back. He looked at me. I said very quietly, "It's the letter you threw away." He did not hear me. The band was still playing. The guests were murmuring. But he saw my mouth move. He saw the smile. And then Marcus stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said. His voice carried. He had been in city council meetings for years. He knew how to fill a room. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." My father turned to him. Marcus pulled an envelope from his jacket. "My office received a complaint last week regarding a potential violation of the Higher Education Act, specifically third-party interference with an admissions decision made by Harvard University in April of 2012. The room went very quiet. "I'm not here in an official capacity," Marcus said. "I'm here as a guest, but I thought Mr. Harrow should know that the statute of limitations on this particular violation is 15 years, and that my mother, Judge Chen, has agreed to hear the civil case if my partner decides to file it." My father's face went gray. "She hasn't decided yet," Marcus said. "She's very patient. She learned it from her grandmother." I took the plastic-wrapped letter from my father's hand. I wiped off the frosting. I held it up so the guests could see. "This is my Harvard acceptance letter," I said. "My father threw it away 12 years ago. He told me I didn't get in. He told me I wasn't good enough. He told me to be realistic." I looked at Kyle. He was staring at me like he had never seen me before. "I graduated from state with a 3.9, I said. "I got a job that required a security clearance. I make more money than anyone in this room except Marcus, and I have been carrying this letter in my wallet for 12 years. I folded it carefully. I put it back in my pocket. "I'm not filing a lawsuit," I said. "I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for an apology." I looked at my father. "I'm asking you to remember this moment. Every time you cut a cake, every time you see a Harvard sweatshirt, every time someone asks about your daughter, I want you to remember that you threw away the best thing that ever happened to this family, and I built something better anyway." I turned to Marcus. "Let's go." We walked out through the back of the country club. The valet brought Marcus's car, a black Audi that my father had definitely noticed. We drove in silence for 3 minutes. Then Marcus said, "That was the most attractive thing I have ever witnessed." I laughed. I had not expected to laugh. I had not expected to feel light. "Your mother is going to be insufferable about this," I said. "She already texted me," he said. She said, quote, "That's my future daughter-in-law." I looked out the window. The highway lights blurred. My phone started buzzing. My mother, then Kyle, then my mother again, then a number I didn't recognize. Probably Sloane's mother. When I turned off the phone, Marcus said, "So, what now?" I thought about it. I thought about the letter in my pocket. I thought about the spreadsheet in my folio. I thought about the 12 years I had spent building a life out of spite and spreadsheets and quiet, patient competence. "Now," I said, "we go home. And tomorrow I frame the letter." My father called me the next morning. He was crying. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't know. He said he had been trying to protect me. I listened for 45 seconds, then I said, "You threw away my future because you were afraid I would leave. And you were right. I did leave. I just took 12 years to do it." I hung up. I have not spoken to him since. The letter is on my desk, framed in gold, next to a photo of Marcus and me at his mother's swearing-in ceremony. Kyle sends me Christmas cards. My mother leaves voicemails. I do not answer. My father still goes to the country club. He still plays golf. He still tells people he has 2 children. But last month, a woman at his bank's retirement dinner asked him what I did for a living. He said, "I don't know. She doesn't talk to me." And for the first time, he said it without smiling. Let me tell you what happened in the weeks after the wedding, because I think the aftermath is just as important as the confrontation. The first week, my phone did not stop ringing. My mother left 12 voicemails. Kyle left 7. Sloan left 2, both of which I deleted without listening. My aunt called. My uncle called. A cousin I had not spoken to in 5 years sent me a Facebook message that said, "Wow. Now just wow." I did not respond to any of them. The second week, the calls slowed down. My mother started texting instead. Short messages. "Can we talk? Your father is heartbroken. Please just call me." I did not respond. The third week, Kyle showed up at my apartment. He did not call first. He just knocked on my door at 7:30 on a Tuesday night. I looked through the peephole. He looked terrible. His face was pale. His eyes were red. I opened the door. "Hey," he said. "Hey. Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He walked into my living room. He looked around. He had never been to my apartment before. He had never asked. He looked at the bookshelves, the framed photos, the view of the city from my window. "Nice place," he said. "Thanks." He sat down on my couch. He put his head in his hands. "Sloan is really mad," he said. "I'm sure she is. She says you ruined our wedding." I sat down across from him. "Kyle, do you know what Dad did?" He looked up at me. "He told me he made a mistake. He said he was trying to protect you. He said he didn't think Harvard was a good fit." "Did he tell you he called them?" Kyle frowned. "Called who?" "Harvard. He called the admissions office. He told them I couldn't leave home because of you." Kyle stared at me. "He told them you would fail 10th grade if I left," I continued. "He told them Mom was sick. He told them the family would fall apart. And then he threw away my acceptance letter before I even saw it." Kyle was quiet for a long time. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't." "He never told me any of that." "I know." Kyle looked at the floor. "I thought you just didn't get in. I thought you were making excuses." "I know." He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. "I'm sorry." I looked at my brother. He was not the enemy. He had never been the enemy. He was just the favorite. He was just the one who got everything without asking. He was just the one who had never once wondered why his sister seemed so angry all the time. "Kyle," I said, "I don't blame you, but I can't be around Dad anymore. And I can't be around Mom if she's going to pretend nothing happened. What about me? You can come over, you can call, but I'm not coming to family dinners. I'm not coming to Christmas. I'm not pretending anymore." Kyle nodded slowly. "Sloan is not going to like that." "Sloan doesn't have to like it. She's not my sister." Kyle almost smiled. "Fair." He stayed for another hour. We talked about his job, my job, the wedding, the cake, the letter. He asked me questions he had never asked before. "What do you actually do for work?" "How long have you been with Marcus?" "Why didn't you ever tell me any of this?" I answered all of them, and when he left, he hugged me. It was the first time he had hugged me since we were children. The fourth week, my mother showed up. She did not knock. She had a key. I had forgotten she had a key. She walked into my apartment at 9 in the morning on a Saturday. I was drinking coffee in my bathrobe. Marcus was still asleep in my bedroom. "Mom," I said. "Yeah, you can't just let yourself in." "I need to talk to you," she said, "alone." I looked toward the bedroom door. It was closed. Marcus was a heavy sleeper. "Fine," I said. "Talk." She sat down at my kitchen table. She looked older than I remembered. Her hair was grayer. Her hands were shaking. Your father's not doing well, she said. Okay. He can't eat, he can't sleep, he just sits on the back porch and stares at the yard. Okay. Don't you care? I put down my coffee cup. Mom, he threw away my future. He called Harvard and lied about our family. He told me I wasn't good enough. He made me stay home for 2 years while Kyle got everything. And you knew. You knew the whole time, and you never said a word. My mother started crying. I was trying to keep the peace, she said. You were trying to keep him happy. Is that so wrong? Yes, I said. It is wrong when it costs your daughter her future. She wiped her eyes. What do you want me to say? I don't want you to say anything. I want you to leave. And I want you to think about why you let this happen for 12 years. My mother stood up. She looked at me. She looked at my apartment. She looked at the closed bedroom door. Is Marcus in there? She asked. Yes. Is he good to you? Yes. She nodded. She walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the knob. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry I wasn't braver. Then she left. I have not seen her since. She leaves voicemails. I listen to them sometimes. She sounds sad. She sounds old. She sounds like someone who is starting to understand what she lost. But understanding is not the same as changing, and I am done waiting for people to change. Let me tell you about the phone call with my father, the one he made the morning after the wedding. I have replayed it in my head 1,000 times. He called at 7:43. I know the time because I looked at my phone before I answered. I was still in bed. Marcus was in the shower. The sun was coming through the window. It was going to be a beautiful day. I answered because I wanted to hear what he would say. I wanted to know if he would lie. I wanted to know if he would apologize. I wanted to know if he would blame me. He said, "It's Dad." I said, "I know." He said, "I'm sorry." I waited. He said, "I didn't know you were so angry." I waited. He said, "I was trying to protect you. Harvard was too far. You were too young. Your mother needed you. Kyle needed you. I thought I was doing the right thing." I said, "Did you think throwing away my letter was the right thing?" He was quiet. "Did you think calling Harvard and lying about our family was the right thing?" "I was scared," he said. "Of what?" "Of losing you." I closed my eyes. "Dad, you didn't lose me because I went to Harvard. You lost me because you stole my choice. You took my acceptance letter and you hid it from me. You called my dream school and you told them I couldn't handle it. You made me feel like I was nothing for 12 years. That's not what You threw away my future because you were afraid I would leave. And you were right. I did leave. I just took 12 years to do it." I hung up. I have not spoken to him since. Let me fast forward 1 year. Marcus and I are engaged. He proposed 6 months after the wedding. We were sitting on my couch. Our couch now, because I moved into his house after my lease ended. He had cooked dinner. He had opened a bottle of wine. He had gotten down on one knee and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life watching you destroy people who underestimate you." I said yes. His mother, Judge Chen, cried. His father shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the family. We have a lot of arguments about fiscal policy. You'll fit right in." My family was not invited to the engagement party. My mother sent a card. Kyle sent a text. My father sent nothing. I framed the letter. It hangs on the wall of my home office, next to my grandmother's obituary and a photograph of Marcus and me at the courthouse, where his mother was sworn in. Every morning, I look at it. Every morning, I remember that I was not destroyed. I was delayed. And delay is not the same as defeat. Let me tell you what I learned. I learned that revenge does not have to be loud. It does not have to be violent. It does not have to be the kind of thing that gets you arrested or excommunicated or written out of the will. Revenge can be quiet. Revenge can be a laminated letter in a wedding cake. Revenge can be a spreadsheet in a leather folio. Revenge can be showing up with a man in a $3,000 suit and letting your father realize, in real time, that he has no idea who you are. I learned that the best revenge is not making someone suffer. The best revenge is making someone understand. Not apologize. Not atone. Understand. Understand what they did. Understand who they did it to. Understand that the person they thought was weak was actually the strongest person in the room. I learned that family is not blood. Family is the people who see you. My grandmother saw me. Marcus sees me. Judge Chen sees me. Kyle is starting to see me. My mother is trying to see me. My father never saw me, and now it is too late. I learned that patience is a weapon. For 12 years, I waited, I worked, I saved, I planned, I did not confront, I did not accuse, I did not demand, I just waited. And when the moment came, I was ready. Not because I had planned every detail, although I had, but because I had spent 12 years becoming someone who could not be dismissed. Plus, I learned that the person who throws away your future does not get to decide when you forgive them. They do not get to decide when you move on. They do not get to decide when the story ends. You do. And you can take 12 years if you want. You can take 20. You can take the rest of your life. The clock is yours. Let me tell you about the last time I saw my father. It was not at the wedding. It was not at a family dinner. It was not at a funeral or a hospital or any of the places where families are supposed to come together. It was at a grocery store. 18 months after the wedding, I was buying vegetables. Marcus was at work. I was alone, pushing a cart down the produce aisle, looking at avocados. I heard a voice behind me. "Is that you?" I turned around. My father was standing there. He looked older, thinner, but his hair was completely gray. He was wearing a golf shirt and khakis and the same expression he had worn my entire childhood, the expression of a man who expected the world to accommodate him. "Dad," I said, "I heard you got engaged." "I did." "To that Marcus fellow?" "Yes." He nodded. He looked at my cart. He looked at my face. He looked at my hands, which were not shaking. "I'm not going to ask you to forgive me," he said. "Good. I just want you to know that I think about it every day. What I did, the letter, the phone call, all of it. Okay." He took a breath. "I was wrong." I looked at him. I had waited 12 years to hear those words. 3 words. I was wrong. And now that he had said them, they felt like nothing. They felt like air. They felt like the smallest possible offering from a man who had taken everything. "Dad," I said, "I appreciate that, but I don't need you to be wrong. I needed you to be different, and you're not different. You're just sorry." He opened his mouth, closed it. "I have to go," I said. "Marcus is waiting." I walked away. I did not look back. I pushed my cart past the avocados, past the tomatoes, past the onions. I paid for my vegetables. I walked to my car. I drove home. I did not cry. Marcus was in the kitchen when I got home. He was making pasta. He looked up at me and said, "You look like you saw a ghost." "Something like that," I said. I told him about the grocery store. He listened. He did not interrupt. When I finished, he said, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "Nothing," I said. "I feel nothing." He nodded. "That's okay." "It is?" "Sometimes nothing is the right thing to feel." He went back to the pasta. I sat down at the kitchen table. I looked at the framed letter on the wall of my office. I looked at my grandmother's photograph. I looked at the engagement ring on my finger. My father was wrong, but I was not angry anymore. I was not sad. I was not bitter. I was just done. Done waiting, done hoping, done pretending that he could become the person I needed him to be. The letter is on my desk, framed in gold, next to a photo of Marcus and me at his mother's swearing-in ceremony. Kyle sends me Christmas cards. My mother leaves voicemails. I do not answer. My father still goes to the country club. He still plays golf. He still tells people he has 2 children. But last month, a woman at his bank's retirement dinner asked him what I did for a living. He said, "I don't know. She doesn't talk to me." And for the first time, he said it without smiling. I think about that sometimes. A man who threw away his daughter's future, standing in a country club, telling strangers that he doesn't know what she does for a living, not because he couldn't find out, but because he never asked. And now it is too late to ask. Now there is no answer he would understand. My grandmother used to say, "The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference." I'm not indifferent to my father. I am something else. I am someone who stopped waiting for him to become the person I needed. I am someone who built a life so full, so rich, so undeniable that his opinion stopped mattering. What, the letter is on my wall? The ring is on my finger. Marcus is in the kitchen making pasta. My grandmother is in the photograph, smiling at me like she knew all along. I did not get the ending I wanted when I was 17. But I got the ending I built. And that is better.